Okay, so when you open up Photoshop, you're going to get a screen kind of like this. If you opened up yesterday, you probably will see your last project down here. But for all of you who are starting, we're going to go to the left-hand side. We're going to see the menu, and we're going to look for Open. Okay, and when we click Open, we're going to go to our Downloads window because that's probably where you saved your project. And we're going to find the project of you tracing out your Oswald character, and we're going to open it in Photoshop. Okay. Now, once we have it open in Photoshop, you're going to see the basic layout is as follows. On the left-hand side, you're going to see your toolbar. There are a lot of tools. There are even other tools hiding under the tools you can see. So there's a million different options. When you mouse over it, you're going to see that Photoshop gives you a little quick video tutorial of what each particular one can do. And it is also going to show you the name of that particular tool. And then next to it, you might see this little square with a letter. And that square with the letter is actually the shortcut to get to that tool. Now, because there are so many of these tools, like for example, the crop tool, not every single one of them has a shortcut. But when you do see this next to it, that means if you just tap the letter C on your keyboard, it will switch to the crop tool. All right, and that goes for a lot of these tools. They're going to have their own quick little shortcuts, like for the pen tool, the brush tool. And I'm going to be using some of those shortcuts to tell you guys the easiest way to access a particular tool and how to use it. So that's your toolbar. Now, you might have noticed when I was clicking on those tools that up top over here, everything seems to be changing. All right, and that is where the tool options are. You'll know you're on that bar because there's a little home right there, a little house logo, and then next to it would be whichever tool you've selected. Like for example, right now I've taken the move tool, and you see the move tool right there with a little drop down option, and then there'll be some other options for that particular tool, and there are a lot of tools and a lot of options. We are going to use some of those options when we take our tools, when we use our tools. So it's important to know that that's the area right here is where you're going to find those options. On the right-hand side, we're going to see a few logos over here. I already have my layers window open, okay? But if you can't find the layers window, I think it's something that you should have open and be able to access while we're working. It is these two sort of diamonds that are sort of stacked on one another. But when you open up Photoshop, you might have, there's a lot of different versions of workspaces and things like that. So if you can't find that layers window, you can go to the very top menu. All right, we're up top where it might be cut off on my video, but where you see file, edit, image, etc., etc. We're going to look for the drop down for window. And when we get the drop down for window, there's going to be a long alphabetized list. And these are going to be for some of the window options that you might want in your workstation. So I'm going to go find layers. It's alphabetical, so layers. And I'm going to click open. And when you see the layer window, it might be a little bit smaller, it might be a little taller, it might have a couple other windows connected to it. But what we're looking for, what we're trying to see is a small thumbnail of our work. And next to it's going to say the word background. And to the right of that, there's going to be a little logo here. If you can't make that out or don't know what it is, it's supposed to look like a little padlock. And again, like with a lot of things in Photoshop, if you mouse over it, you'll get a little pop-up that tells you what it is. So that indicates that it's partially locked. So we're going to go to that layer right now, and we're going to unlock it. Okay? When you unlock it, you'll notice the name of the layer changed from background to now layer 0. Next thing I want to do is I want to brighten up my picture. Okay? And I'm going to tell you the shortcut to get there. If you're working on a PC, one of your laptops, it's going to be hold down the control key. And that control key on your keyboard is going to be on the bottom row. There's probably going to be two of them, one on the left-hand side, one on the right-hand side. It's probably the last key on the left. And you're going to hold that key down and just tap the letter L. Sorry, my keyboard's a little sleepy this morning. Tap the letter L, and then a levels window should open up. Now you can kind of move that to the side so you can still see your work. When you open up that levels window, you're going to see there is the preset to default, and then you'll see there's an input level window, which is like a graph almost, Yours might not look like mine. This is unique to each picture that you're working with. And an output levels down here, which looks like a black bar fading into white. We are not concerned with the output levels, only the input levels. So we're looking at that graph. And underneath that graph, you'll see there's a little triangle, white triangle, a gray triangle, and a black triangle. We're going to start with the white triangle, and we're going to slide that to the left. And you'll notice it just makes the picture brighter and brighter. If I go all the way over, it's going to bleach everything out. So my goal here is not to bleach everything out, but to get my picture nice and bright. So once it was kind of grayish, maybe has a little light shadow on it, I want to kind of get that background looking crisp. And once I figure a good spot for that, the only thing that I might notice is that it's made my outline look a little bit light too. It's lightened everything. So to make that outline really bold and stand out, I'm going to go back to that input level, and I'm going to go to the black triangle, and I'm going to slide that over until that outline looks nice and rich and dark. You can see what I just did. Okay, it's subtle. If you move it too far over, you're going to start affecting some of the other areas. But I want to kind of make the blacks really black and the whites really white. Now, if you end up with a little bit of static or some like corners that aren't quite perfect or whatever, the only thing I'm really concerned with now is the actual character, that they look good. So once I have it the way I want it, I'm just going to click on OK. Now I'm ready to start painting. All right, to paint this character, what I want to do is I want to create almost like a transparency on top of my original picture. That way I don't mess with the original, and I don't destroy my drawing in case I make a mistake, or I don't 3 days later after working on it, I don't like it, I want to change something up. I'm going to protect this original one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that layer window, and now I'm going to lock this layer so I don't accidentally work on it. You'll see right above it there's some options where you see like layer 0, then you'll see there's some little logos here. We're looking for that padlock again. Okay? And when I click on it, you can see it says lock, indicates it's fully locked. Now that that's locked and put away, I want to create a new layer. So again, in my layer window, I'm going to look at where my layer is right now, and I'm going to go to the bottom of that little window. And you'll see a little file folder logo. We'll see a little garbage can, which is not activated right now because my layer is locked. And next to it, there's a little square with a plus in it. Okay? That's create a new layer. And when I click it, it automatically creates that layer. For all of you, it should probably say layer 1 because the first one's going to be layer 0. And when you look at the thumbnail next to it, it's actually a little checkerboard. And the checkerboard is just a visual representation of clear, meaning that there's nothing there. All right. So I've got that clear layer now, which means if I paint on this layer, I'll have that kind of covering up, protecting my original one, so I can put all my paint on that without ruining the layer 0. But to see the paint, see through the paint, and be able to see what I'm doing on the actual picture, I have to just change this layer's properties. And what does that mean? Well, if you look, while you're selected on layer 1, if you look just above it, you're going to see some options. We want to go to where we find the word normal. And this is the layer property. Right now it's on normal, and we want to change it to multiply. It'll be easier to understand what that just did once we start painting. But once we set that layer to multiply, and we don't have to set all the layers to multiply, just this one. Once we've done that, we're good. We don't have to mess with this side too much anymore. Now we're going to go over to our tools. First tool we're going to get is our brush tool. Now, if you can't find the paintbrush, you might notice there's some other tools that kind of look similar to the paintbrush. Well, there's a pen, or what's the difference? We're going to be using the brush tool. And if you can't find it on your toolbar, all you have to do is press the letter B, like B for brush. Now, when the brush appears, you can see mine, it should either look like a little plus sign or a circle. Now, if yours looks like a plus sign, all right, it might be a really, really small brush, or your caps lock might be on. So double check to make sure your caps lock is off. And then we want to go up to the tool options. When you're on that home, we see that little brush logo. And then next to it, we see like a little dot and a number. Okay? That little dot is your paintbrush. That little number is how big the brush is. And right next to it, this drop-down option will open up that selection. So you see size and you see hardness. Down here, you're going to see some sample brushes. I'm going to tell you for right now, for getting started, don't play around with these. Okay? We're just concerning ourselves with the size and the hardness. And I'll tell you the hardness should be at 100%. The size you can kind of adjust, and when you look at your picture, it'll show you how big that particular brush is. In this case, the brush is 79 pixels. Now it's 300. Now it's 2000. Okay? So you can adjust the size of the brush there. And you want to make sure your brush is whatever size you need it, small for small areas, big for big areas, and you want to make sure that the hardness is at 100%. Now we have to pick a color. Our color picker is at the bottom of the toolbar on the left-hand side. You might see by default two little squares down here, one stacked on top of the other, probably black and white. If you've used the program before, there might be a color there, but this is where you can access your color picker. Just click on the top square. When I click on that top square, you're going to see the color picker opens up. You'll have a couple different sliders here. One might change the color, or in my case, it might make it lighter or darker. Well, we have like a whole rainbow palette here, and I can make those colors a little more neutral, or a little darker, a little grayer, or really bright and like highlighter, specific highlighter green. So anywhere I click on this particular color palette, that'll be my new selection for a color. The current color was black, and this is what I've selected right now. And when I have the color I want, I can hit OK. And you'll know you have that color in your palette because it should be in the top square down here on your toolbar. And now if you start painting, you'll see, there you go. You just click and drag. One of the more important functions for you to know is how to undo something. Let's say you made a mistake. You clicked when you didn't want to click. The way to undo is to hold down Control and then tap the letter Z. And you'll notice that you have the ability to sort of undo multiple steps. Now, mattering on how much memory is available to your computer and how it's configured and everything else like that, you may be able to take a lot of steps back or just a few. But understand, once you close this, save this and close this out, you can't undo things a day later. So you'll make a mistake, kind of correct it right away. Now, I was kind of painting wildly before, and now I'm kind of more carefully painting my character. And that's going well. Now, maybe I make a quick little mistake, boom. I can do Control Z, but maybe I don't want to, completely undo all of that. To redo something, it's Control, Shift, and then tap the letter Z, and that will redo it. But you still might have some coloring that you're doing, but you want to kind of touch things up a little bit. Like you see, I got out of the lines over there a little bit on the face. To fix that, we can switch our brush to the eraser tool. Now, eraser tool works the same as a brush, except it takes paint away instead of adding it. So to switch to the eraser tool, you can find the eraser tool on your toolbar, or you can press the letter E. B for brush and E for eraser. The eraser works the same way as the brush, and it also has the same adjustments as a brush. So you might even notice up top it didn't really change my tool options. You can go ahead and make that brush bigger or smaller as you need it. But once again, you should leave the hardness of this particular brush at 100%. And from there, happy painting. All right. If you need to get in closer to see an area to see if you really got it, the shortcut to zoom in, zoom out is Control plus. And the plus key is up near your numbers on the top of the keyboard, and Control minus to zoom out. So you should be able to get in pretty tight and zoom in, zoom out, and that'll be really helpful in terms of being able to paint. You can see I just erased instead of painted by accident, so I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. I'm going to press B to switch back to the brush, and I'm going to go ahead and have some fun painting. Let's just say I want to change colors. I can go ahead and click on my color picker and just select a different color, let's say for a shirt, and start painting the shirt. But let's just say I worked on the shirt for a little while, and now I realize I want to go back and I want to work on the face again. Okay, what do? I can go back to my color picker. Now, how do I match the exact same green? I can try to eyeball it, but it's not going to work. I mean, if I do that, you're going to see it's slightly different. It might be hard to see on the video, but they don't match perfectly. But if I go to, I'm going to just undo that really quick. If I go to my color picker and I click on the color picker, you'll notice right now when I go off of the actual palette, I get this little eyedropper tool. And if I click on a color, it's going to match that color exactly. So even if I click on the white of the picture, it'll match that. If I click on the black, it'll match that. The red. So if you had a color that you were using a day or two ago and you wanted to match it again perfectly, you just use that option on your color picker. And then it's happy painting. The only other thing that you need to understand at this point is how to save your work. All right? And realize that Photoshop is a big program. It doesn't auto-save anything. So if you close out your a program without saving, you're going to lose whatever you did that day. So to make sure that you're saved and you're good, we want to go to File on the top menu, Save, and then if it's the first time you're saving it, you're going to see the name of the file, whatever it was. In this case, I never renamed it, so I'm going to rename mine for right now Oswald. Okay, and then it should be a .psd file. That stands for Photoshop document, and that just means that it's been saved as layers. If you're saving it as something else like a PNG or a JPEG or any other file type, that might be a flat image that no longer has this layer information. And that'll make it just complicated for us to be able to move forward and do more work to it. So you want to save it as a Photoshop document. And the Photoshop document is honestly the highest quality version of saving this, because when you save it as a picture, it kind of degrades the image over time. So when I hit that, I'm just going to save it, and you can save it. I would recommend you save it to your OneDrive or your cloud so that you are able to access this on different machines. And then when you close it out, you're going to notice when you save it for the first time, you're going to get one of these maximize compatibility warnings. Just hit OK on that, and you're good to go. And that is getting started in Photoshop.